Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your viewing environment. We are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, broadcasting live from the FijiWater.com sponsored studio to address whatever topics you might like to discuss, whatever issues of life you find challenging or that you find difficult to navigate. We are here because God is concerned about that which concerns you. So you can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship, you can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families, you can discuss dating and relationships, whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind. You need to be reminded that God is concerned about all that concerns you. And so we are here, live in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, which is brought to you daily by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock, where the water collects in a natural, sustainable artesian aquifer, where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the blue cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is not just ordinary water. This is Fiji Water at FijiWater.com. And for those of you who continue giving on the Give segment of our app at New Life-Delaware, and those of you that have made a weekly and monthly commitment by supporting the broadcast, by giving on the contribution pages of our websites at newlifeministriesinternational.com and newlifeinternationalcdc.com, we thank you for your support and for your commitment as we fulfill our commitment to God to be here for you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. And I want to remind all of our listeners and viewers that we are Facebook Live, we are YouTube Live, and we are RadioFreeNetwork.com Live. So if you go to RadioFreeNetwork.com and click on radio, the Dropbox will appear. Click on the New Life link, and every broadcast is available to you at 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. So I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you struggle with the fact of loving two fathers, your biological father and the father who raised you from a young age. So, first of all, let me begin by saying this. This is what is known as blending families. And sometimes the blend doesn't work because you've got cream that rises to the top, and then you have what is left over, the love that's left over for you. And let me begin by really walking you through this process, because first and foremost, the blessing of being loved by two fathers is just that. It's a blessing. And you have to learn to love them, because there's nothing wrong, or you're not selling one of them short by loving both of them. And here's what you've got to understand. So everyone doesn't have a biological father who's responsible. That's just the reality of life. But when you have someone who's willing to step in and help to raise you, what you have is one person who loves you because you're their seed. You're biologically, you have the same DNA. Now, you may have different personalities, but you have the same DNA. In other words, the same blood that flows through them flows through you. The good news is you have someone who was willing to step in, because that biological father is not responsible, was never responsible for you. Only loved you because of the DNA. They're not going to demonstrate love They're just going to love you because you're part of them. But they have no sense of responsibility. And so what you have to recognize is that when someone else steps in and raises you, they raise you because they love you, and if they're a Christian, you both have the blood of Jesus flowing through your body, because now you both have been saved. So you have that connection, and now you have a new DNA. Let me rephrase that. You still have the old DNA, but you have a new strand of DNA that's been mixed into the equation, into your makeup. You have the human blood, and then you have the spiritual blood. So you have someone who is willing to step in, be responsible for helping to raise you, and loves you. So you're not doing a disservice to your biological father loving the other person. You get the privilege of loving them both, which means you get a double portion of love. The problem is you're having a hard time accepting that because you feel that you are doing a disservice to your biological father by loving someone else. You're not. You get the privilege of loving them both, and you get the reward of being loved by them both, just loved differently. And that's okay, because family dynamics are always going to be different. I won't even say challenging. We make them challenging, but they're really just different. They don't have to be challenging. And then, there's always, and this is for all of our listeners and viewers, because trust me, you're not the only person dealing with that issue. But then there's always the issue of treating the party who steps in, the responsible party, badly because you feel that it would be a disservice to your biological father to love them. And you don't want to treat people badly who love you, because it will either sever or destroy the relationship. So you have to recognize the importance of being, and the privilege of being loved by more than one person. And that all begins also with, and this is for everyone, with our relationship with the Lord. Because you're going to love your spouse, you're going to love your children. But until you really work on your relationship with Jesus, until you work on your relationship with the Lord, you're going to find it difficult to love people in the way that Christ loved us. Because none of us are perfect. We're all being perfected as we go through this life journey. You have the privilege of being loved by two people, so what you really need to do is focus on loving them back and not struggling with who you should love and who you should love more. Because there's no comparison. You got two different people to love and two different people who love you in their own way, in their different ways. But the good news is you have people who love you. This segment of the broadcast has been brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. If you are not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will place you into our queue so that you may become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill. And if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill at T-Mobile, America's largest, fastest, and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you turned 35 years of age this year and to date have not had a really meaningful relationship. And now you're starting to really feel that as though you're the problem. You want to know what can you do to ensure that you can have meaningful relationships. So this is very interesting because, the Bible always tells us, it says to examine ourselves. And you've done that now to get to the place where you're starting to feel like you might be the problem. But here's what you need to know. First of all, you are not the problem. Okay, I get emails and communications from people often talking about, dysfunctional relationships and, relationships that don't last. And sometimes, the only common denominator in those factors are you, the person who's communicating. So I'll respond to that. In your case, you're not the problem. Let me walk you through what the problems really are and also discuss with you the changes that you're going to make that are going to lead to really meaningful relationships. So one of the things that you've been doing during the course of your lifetime is setting some standards. Your adult life, you're setting some standards. I mean, we all start out at point A and then we live life to get to point Z, but what you've done along the way of that alphabet is decided that you're going to set some standards, meaning, relationships that you had in the past have been, primarily intimate or sexual relationships that don't last because everyone's in it for the wrong reason. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is you decided some time ago, okay, I'm not going to live that way any longer. I'm going to set some standards. So you set some standards, and your standards were good standards. It has to be someone who has the same professional drive, career driven that you have, someone who has the same work ethic that you have, someone who is not gainfully employed, let's do that. Someone who has already started developing their own life, all that's good. You've set some standards. And because you've set some standards, some of the people that you've been dealing with over time, they dropped off. And then you haven't been getting a lot of, interest from people. And the reason is because you've now set standards. But now you have to increase your standards. Now, I know this is going to, sound like to some people that you're eliminating people from even more people from the equation because you're raising your standards even more. And that standard has to be, think about this. If you're going to experience the fullness of God in your life, you have to make certain that you're prepared for the fullness of God in your life. And that means that you can't have someone in your life who's going to be a stumbling block to you experiencing the fullness of God. Or as I tell the students in our Achievers Academy, you don't want a liability, you want an asset. Now that doesn't mean they have to start out at the exact same level that you're in right now, but they have to be on the path to that. And the way that you'll know that is by their relationship with the Lord. So let's think about this. You set good career standards, you've set personality standards, you've set goal standards. They have to have all of those things to be working towards success. Okay, that's a positive. Now, the next level is, do they have a relationship with the Lord? And what is that relationship with the Lord. Because those are two different things. They may be saved, but they may not be delivered from the world. They may be delivered from the world, but they may not really have a relationship with the Lord. Someone can not be a drinker and a partier, but they still don't have a real relationship with the Lord other than being saved. So the Bible tells us we have to work out our salvation, so they have to be working on their relationship with the Lord consistently. And how do you work on your relationship with the Lord consistently? You increase your prayer life, meditation on the Word of God, which means you have to be studying the Word of God, attending church every Sunday, at a whole nother level of praise and worship. You've got to be doing all of those things to be at the next level. And so that has to be your new standard. And you may not be getting a lot of, I'll use a different word because I was going to use a word, but you may not be getting a lot of invitations for dates, and you may not have a lot of relationships moving forward, but you only need one. You only need that one relationship that is blessed by God, that is going to allow the two of you to build a great life together, a great quality of life together. So that has to be a new standard. And the way that you test the standard is by the method I've been sharing with everyone about how we should have a whole new methodology for dating and a whole new implementation strategy for dating. You accept the invitation from those who want to take you to church on Sunday. And if they just ask you out to dinner, you ask them, tell them, I don't go to dinner until I go to church with someone and then out to lunch. And then when you do that, tell them it has to be 3 times. 3 consecutive Sundays and 3 consecutive lunches. Because you're not going to waste that last week of the month. You're not going to waste time going out with someone to dinner that's only going to lead to eventual destruction of another relationship. You're just not. Because your standards are not just career-oriented, not just relationship-oriented, but relation-oriented. Your standards are now pleasing unto God. How about that? And so you're even going to make it more difficult for someone to date you. But you're really not making it difficult. You're making yourself available to the right person. The one person that God has appointed for your life. Someone that you can walk with in agreement, someone that you can be yoked with to build a great quality of life, to plow the fields of life and build on the foundation you'll lay once the ground has been cleared. So you're not the problem. It's the people you've been dating that are the problems, that you're not having meaningful relationships. And now at 35, you're ready. You still have some preparation to do, because we all do. You have to set those relationships that you've had in the past aside. You have to decide that listen, if they were the one for you, they'd still be in a relationship with you. Because you were not the problem. Now, when I say you're going to have to do some things to prepare for a relationship, meaning you're not going to be preparing to just date someone. You're going to prepare yourself to be a wife. And the person that you're going to eventually have a relationship is now preparing themselves to be a husband. Because that's what this is really about. That the two will become one. But you want it to be the right person. You don't want it to be just someone that you've had a relationship with and you get in a relationship with and they ask you to marry them, but they don't have a relationship with the Lord They know who God is, but that's about the extent of their relationship with him. They know that Jesus saves, but they have no relationship with him. Remember, Jesus said there's a whole lot of people who will say, Lord, Lord, but he will be saying, but I never knew you. I don't really know you. I never got to know you. And the person that you want to have a relationship is with someone who had gotten to know Jesus and continues to know him in a greater way. Meaning that they work on that every single day. Listen, there are good card-carrying Christians who some don't have a daily relationship with the Lord. Some do. They pray, they pray over their meals. There's some people that still forget to pray over their meals even though they're saved. Because they're saved. But that's the extent of their relationship with the Lord. And that's not the relationship you want for your life. You don't want someone who has no relationship. So you're going to test that standard with every person who invites you to go out. You're going to test that standard. Do you go to church? That's the question you should ask. I have a spiritual son who has, anytime he asks a woman out, he's single. Anytime he asks a woman out, he asks 3 questions first. You should have questions also. If someone asks you out to dinner, do you attend church? And if they say yes, then you say, I would like to go with you to church before we ever go out to dinner and out to lunch after church. So church isn't the date. Church is the test of standards. Lunch is the date. They want to date you, that's the requirement. We're going to church. If they don't have a church home, then you invite them to your church. I have to admit, I wish you were in our area. Because I would tell you, bring them to church and then go out to lunch with them. But you're not in our area, and I'm still telling you the same thing. If he doesn't have a church home, when he asks you out, invite him to your church. And then go out to lunch with him. Sit and have a conversation. And the conversation shouldn't look like the things that you two enjoy doing for entertainment, for sport. It shouldn't be where you like to travel. The conversation should be, tell me about your relationship with the Lord. You'll get some of that if you attend their church. You'll get an understanding of what they're being taught. If he comes to your church, you know what he's being taught. But let's talk about what your relationship with the Lord really looks like. And how do you intend to increase that relationship? That should be one of the questions at lunch. And then what's your 7-year plan? What are your goals? What is your plan for the future? Not just today, but for the future, the next 7 years. These are the questions we should be talking about. Do you see yourself married, and what does that look like? The biggest mistake that we have endured is society telling us that you shouldn't be having those conversations on the first dates. Wrong. Just flat out wrong. Those should be the conversations. Most of what society will tell you is going to be wrong because it's the world. Those are the questions you should be asking so that you know whether or not you even want. Let me rephrase that. Well, no. If you want to date them, or if you desire to even explore a relationship with them. We shouldn't be exploring relationships with people just to satisfy our flesh. To just say we're dating someone, or to just be involved in an intimate relationship. Those things will come. But we should get everything right now, because now we know better. And when you know better, you do better. We don't just explore relationships to find out if we're making mistakes. That's not the right order. We want to limit our mistakes. We want to minimize the possibility of making mistakes. We're going to make some. But if we're intentional about what we're doing, we will find that we will be much better at doing it. We want to make certain that, you're 35 now, that you're not still going through the same changes, the same experiences that you've been going through when you're 40. That's not the goal. By 40, you'd be on the fifth year of the 7-year plan that he tells you he has. And if he doesn't have one, if he doesn't have a plan for his own life, he doesn't have a plan for your life either. Or a life together. We want to make certain that we position ourselves to experience the fullness of God. And the only way to do that is to make certain that anyone we walk together with, that we can walk together in agreement, and anyone we're going to be yoked with, that we're not unequally yoked. That we are on the same path that God has placed before our lives. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Terrett, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, stop in at their retail stores. They have everything a man could possibly need. They have shirts for men, ties for men, suits for men, and accessories. If you are not in those areas, you can order from Charles Terrett at ctshirts.com. And The White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you're in New York, stop in at the retail store. They have everything you could possibly need. Home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. And if you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you have been working hard for 2 years straight and have seen the results, the benefits and results of your work. However, you really want to slow down the last 2 weeks of this year, and you want to know, would this be a good idea? My answer to that is no. Unless you are dealing with some health issues that you need to address during these last 2 weeks of this year, I submit to you that the last 2 weeks of this year are the opportunity for you to get ahead of the curve and the herd. And the reason is because most people are thinking just what you're thinking now. Here's the good news. You've been working hard the last 2 years. So you said you started working hard in January of last year, then the pandemic came, and you feel like you've been, and many of us feel this way, that you were working harder during the pandemic, and you've been working hard all of this year, and you've been working hard for 2 years straight. What I'm going to suggest to you is, and this is what I want to say to you and to all of our listeners and viewers, how you end this year is going to determine how you go into the new year. So you're trying to address health. If you're trying to address health and wellness issues in the last 2 weeks of this year, that's a positive, because you're going to conclude the year with health and wellness. You'll go into the new year healthy and well, body, mind, and spirit. So that's the good news. That's the gospel, the good news. Okay? If you're not dealing with health issues and you're diligent about your work, you need to remain diligent about your work. And why is that? Because you're going to create momentum in the last 2 weeks of this year that will take you into the new year. And that momentum will carry you through the new year. It will take you to a place where you begin to maximize your success. You don't want to miss that opportunity. So no, it is not a good idea. And I know I started off with a blunt no. It is not a good idea to slow down for the last 2 weeks of the year. We're already going to be a little slower, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. You're going to miss some days of banking, for example, because I know we can do banking online, and that's great, but banks are closed for at least Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Most government offices closed Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Most businesses closed Christmas Day, New Year's Day. But that doesn't imply that you're not able to work. You can catch up on a lot of administrative work, on a lot of paperwork and documentation, because a lot of places are going to be closed those 2 days. And people get in the holiday spirit and they automatically start to slow down, which is going to slow you down from doing a lot of external work, but it doesn't prevent you from doing internal work.